Welcome everyone to the Naked Founder Podcast, a business podcast where nothing is hidden. Thank you to our sponsors, Financial, the home of money for women, and our producer, Dan Brown of Renowned. Our guest today is Ruth Percival, CEO of Contollo Group, a first-time founder at the tender age of 51. She launched Contollo Group in 2024 and has made 5 acquisitions, employs more than 230 people and has grown turnover to around £37 million. She plans to double the size of the business by the end of 2026 and has 160 potential acquisition targets in the pipeline. She also shares her birthday of May the 9th with yours truly, which is always a good sign. Welcome, Ruth Percival.
Thank you very much, Chris Maguire.
No, thank you very much. You're the only person who uses my surname, Ruth. But you can, because we share the same birthday.
We do, indeed.
Ruth, we always start each episode of the Naked Founder podcast with the same question. What didn't they tell you about founding a business that you wish you'd known?
So what do I wish I'd known? I'm very ambitious for our business, for myself, for the team, but that ambition has really grown as my confidence has grown over the last couple of years. And I wish I'd had the confidence to raise a bigger pot of money with Northedge at the beginning.
Did you ever say what the pot was?
So we raised 12.5 million.
And do you
in 2024? And I wish we'd raised more, because if I'd had the confidence then about the scale of the business that we could build, I think we'd be unstoppable.
We did an interview recently with a founder, and they said always raise more than you need.
Yeah, it's good advice.
They were talking about imposter syndrome among female founders, and they said if you need 10, ask for 15.
Yeah,
don't ask for 5 and settle for 1.
It's absolutely right. I was thinking about this. You know, you read in interviews about men will always say they can do something that they might never have done before in an interview. And this is stereotyping. Yeah. And a woman might say exactly what she has done, but wouldn't say what she was capable of. And I don't know whether this is the same sort of. I don't know if this is the same.
And that's the reason for the Naked Founder podcast as well, because this is a problem that other female founders talk about as well. Actually,
The other thing with that confidence though is spending money. So I wish at the moment we've got a lot of I've got some great business leaders around me, but we've all been leaning in to do those technical skills like HR, IT, finance that we're not really skilled to do, because we're sort of, we're a startup and we're all rolling our sleeves up. And it would have been, if I'd have recruited some of those more senior technical experts into the business, I think it would have taken pressure off my leadership team and me in particular, and I think we'd have got things going a lot faster. So it's about confidence, isn't it? It's the same sort of thing.
Isn't it interesting how, like, if I was interviewing, and not to stereotype all men and not to stereotype all women, but you've started a business 2 years ago, you've grown it to 38 million turnover, 250 staff, you've made 5 acquisitions, and you're talking about how you could have grown it quicker. If you'd got somebody in a man who'd grown a business to like 200 grand, got six staff, and was thinking about an acquisition, it would have been, the big I am for some men. But that's really interesting. You've had a stellar career. It's interesting you talk about confidence as well, because you've enjoyed a stellar career and very, very good reputation as well. So we're not going to talk about your career highlights. We're going to talk about a difficult moment on the Naked Founder podcast. You worked for a company called Fishawack between 20 and 2022. They got bought by Bridgepoint. And as sometimes happens when a new investor comes in, they do away with the old management team. And in that case, that meant doing away with Ruth Percival. I'm going to use your surname. Okay.
Ruth Hannah Percival, when we're talking about grim things like this.
Right,
yeah.
Okay. And suddenly you found yourself at whatever the tender age was, surplus to requirements. How, and having enjoyed so much success in your career, how did you find that?
It was, well, obviously really bloody difficult. It was.
You were going to say something else, weren't you?
I managed to not say it. It was very difficult. It's very humble. It's a very humbling experience, because you're working incredibly hard, and with private equity, you always know that that's a possibility. So whilst it's not a surprise, it's nevertheless a shock, and it knocked my confidence terrifically. At the time, I think we've talked about it before, my father was really ill. He was dying of cancer, and it turned out to be perhaps a good thing in the end, because it gave me some time, the chance to spend some time with him in the last few months, which I just wouldn't have done if I'd have been at work. I just wouldn't have made those choices. But it was really difficult. And then I was looking around thinking, right, what on earth am I going to do next? And so I flirted with going back into advisory, but my heart just wasn't in it. I went for a few roles to join other teams in private equity portfolios. One of those was actually a Northedge investment, and I learned a couple of really important things through that. So firstly, I watched how Northedge treated that team. So Northedge clearly wanted this role. It was a kind of FD, CFO, COO type role. And they really wanted that role in that business. But the management team had been together for donkey's years. They were really tight and they needed an awful lot of persuasion. And Ray Stanton and Phil Frame, who were on that portfolio at Northedge, they were so careful and respectful about how they managed that through, and really patient. And it made me think, gosh, if I was a management team, or if I was a CEO, I'd want somebody treating me like that, which is one of the reasons I wanted Northedge as my investor. But the second thing I realised was I didn't want to join somebody else's team. I didn't want to have to fit myself in to be the last piece of the jigsaw in someone else's already formed team, and it made me realise I wanted to do it for myself, which is what I've done.
Don't you think though that as you get older as well, you become less tolerant and less patient? You've got a policy at Contollo Group. It's a no dickheads rule.
We do, yeah,
absolutely.
We have it above all the doors.
Absolutely, and you don't want to work with dickheads. And I think as you get older, you realise that actually things that are important to you that might not have been important to you at 25 are much more important to you, at whatever age you are. So you decided that a return or going to a big four company wasn't for you. You spent your career working with founders, and I often think, I think to myself as well that I launched Business Cloud in 2016, and I'm not sure I would have done it, and maybe I should have done it earlier once I'd started to do it. And then myself and John Simcox bought it 5 years ago, and we realised then that it was like our calling as well. You spent your career working with founders. How long was it before you thought to yourself, after starting Contollo Group, actually, I found my calling?
It's my favourite job so far. I've absolutely loved this role. I feel like I'm thriving in it. I'm a deeply curious person, and I'm stretched all the time, but in a good way. It's forced me to stretch myself, and I like all of the different challenges that come with it. So I'm really, really enjoying this.
You mentioned you're loving the challenges. You're loving like being the founder and the CEO of the business as well. But obviously there's stresses and there's pressures that go with that role, growing the business, recruitment, acquisition, etc., etc. How does that sit with you?
I find I do get stress. The thing that the way it impacts me is I don't sleep. So I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm turning things over in my mind. It helps. So my husband Jonathan, Boyers, who you obviously know very well, he's done a similar thing. So he set up a business from scratch a couple of years ago, corporate finance practice at Alvarez and Marcel. Coming back to confidence, he's recruited 160 people with, that takes terrific confidence. That's probably the difference, isn't it? But
you've recruited 230 people.
I have, but I've bought them with income. He's recruited them and then had to go and win the work. So that takes a level of bravery and confidence, doesn't it? That's on a different scale. But back to how I cope with it, I don't think I'd be doing this if I wasn't married to him for a whole host of reasons. So he does understand. He's guided me a lot. He's advised me, and he understands building the business in the same way I do.
Well, he's worked with founders all his life. I mean, you mentioned earlier that your favourite ever job is Contollo Group. Presumably appearing on the Naked Founder podcast is your favourite podcast.
Obviously, it has to be my second favourite.
That's a private joke. Right, okay, let's go back a little bit, okay, because I'll come back to Contollo Group towards the end of the podcast, I want to talk a bit about your history and your career. Okay, because I've often wonder the sort of serendipity and the fate that plays its part in how you got to where you were. So you studied genetics at university, and that looked like that might be your career until Professor Grindell, who I would love to get on the podcast, pulled you to one side at the end of a lesson and dealt you some pretty harsh news.
He did. He said, well, I'd just broken the Electron microscope, and he did tell me that this wasn't a career for me. But so I did genetics at university, and I got a Desmond, which a Desmond Tutu.
See, that
which you
is
don't.
That's one for the kids. That is. Everybody used to say that. And your generation. Okay, so you got a Desmond.
I got a Desmond. You don't see those anymore.
No.
I don't think they award them. I've never seen a CV with a Desmond on it.
No.
I don't. Anyway, that's an aside. So that was for two reasons. One, I wasn't very good at it, and two, I didn't do any work. So I came from a very strict family, and I'm that completely stereotype kid who comes from a strict family and then goes absolutely wild at university. So to give you an example, my 18th birthday party, I had a curfew of 10 o'clock and everybody else went out clubbing afterwards. So I got into university and I didn't come home before 5 a.m. every single night for 3 years. So I didn't do much work, and then it turned out I wasn't very good at it either. So
you got two daughters as well.
Yeah, and so it's taught me a big lesson. I've not made the same mistake with them. I was that mother who at 15 was like, yeah, you can have a party in my house, which obviously was terrible. But
you mentioned your family. Your dad was an accountant, actually, and after your failed attempt at genetics, you then went into accounting. How did you find that?
I went back home with my tail between my legs from university, and my father said, you need a proper qualification so you can do your
Can I say that was a really good fatherly impression?
It was. You need a proper qualification. So you need to do chartered accountancy. And my father was senior partner of this practice in Manchester, and my grandfather had been the senior partner for him. So it just felt inevitable, didn't it? And my brother came to work there as well. And so I qualified. So I did these exams, which were incredibly difficult. And I studied at, if you don't know anything about accountancy, you go to these sort of private schools. It was called Accountancy Tuition Centre. And I was the dunce of the class. And the lecturers there just had their head in their hands because my father had been a really good client, and they'd got all these kids coming through. They'd managed to pass their exams, and then they'd got this wayward daughter to try and they were determined that I would pass these exams. So they gave me loads of extra help. And I did pass. I will say my eldest daughter, she's doing her last final at university today, and she's been doing the first year of her chartered accountancy exams in her spare time since January, and seems to be passing the exams. So they must be much easier than they were when I did them, Chris. That's the only conclusion I can come to. Can
I just say that as the first year to ever do GCSEs,
yes,
and when I see record GCSE pass rates, I say every year, you must a lot harder than I did.
It's much harder. It's much harder.
So we've established that your daughters obviously got help, whereas you were very, very clever, and these exams were like, and we didn't have AI back in the day, did we?
We didn't have AI.
So by some miracle, you qualified as a chartered accountant.
I did. And then, so my father's practice was audit and tax, and I absolutely hated it. I was bored out of my mind. So I left to join a corporate finance practice, and he went absolutely ballistic. Yeah. And it was made 10 times worse because my brother was working there as well. And he said, oh my God, this is so awful. And the only reason I'm doing it is because you're here. So he left as well and went to become a maths teacher. And then I don't think my father ever forgave me. It wasn't a good moment.
Hard one. It's a hard one when your parents think you're going to follow in the family business and you don't. You had your epiphany, as a lot of people have their epiphany, outside Smithfield Market.
I did. I was going to count bananas, and
for a living.
Yes, that's what auditors do. I was counting bananas for a living, and I sat outside and had my head on the steering wheel, just crying at the thought of another day counting bananas, and decided I needed to do something.
The thing
different.
is, I've only ever said to my kids, do something you enjoy, and try and find something that you really enjoy, and you'll never work another day in your life. Which is the same advice my dad gave to me, and it passed down from generation to generation. You do find yourself repeating sometimes what your parents say.
Well, so my father said, yes, this is a really boring job, but it's given us an excellent standard of living, so you suck it up. So that was a very different kind of attitude. And I don't feel the same way. So I have been extremely fortunate in that I've found jobs which I have absolutely loved. I loved my corporate finance career, and I've loved this role as well.
Well, I'm going to tell my dad's story. Okay, because actually thinking about my dad, he was a lovely man. He would always say, get yourself a trade.
Yeah.
The world will always need plumbers. The world will always will need electricians.
It is true.
But he also said to me, never get a tattoo. And I said, why's that then, Dad? He said, because if the police arrest you, they'll know who you are. Exactly. And that's good advice.
Oh,
so I've got no tattoos, but I was once arrested. But the police didn't know who I was.
Because you didn't have a tattoo.
Because I didn't have a tattoo as well, actually. And that was a grievous miscarriage of justice, but it was all sorted in the end.
I'm going to pass that one on to my children.
Do that, absolutely. Now, you decided to give corporate finance a go. You quickly excelled. Now, and it's hard to believe now, but that industry is still dominated by men. It's still dominated by men. Back in the day, when you entered corporate finance, it was even more dominated by men. And unfortunately, sexism was a problem. And as a young person coming into that industry, you experienced it firsthand. It wasn't nice. How bad was it?
It was pretty bad at times. I had some pretty awful experiences, but I reflect back on that time with very mixed feelings, because by nature, and as you know, I'm chatty and I'm really interested in people. I laugh very easily. So I'm quite a flirty personality. And it used to get me into a whole heap of trouble. And I genuinely didn't understand what was happening. And it took me I was at BDO actually, and one of the senior partners there, eventually I was talking to him. I was on the director or partner track, I can't remember, at BDO. And I talked to him about it, and he said, you need to dial it down. He said, you are permanently dialed up to 10 and you need to dial it down and this will stop. And I did dial it down and it did work. Now, don't get me wrong. There are still some absolute predators out there who you can be dialed down to 0 and they're still going to think you're fair game. So that is what it is. But that did work. But I look at that now and think, God, I look at my beautiful daughters who are full of joy and effervescence and think, can I imagine in the peak of their careers telling them to dial it down and that being good advice? Maybe the world's moved on and that's not how things are anymore.
Yeah, but it's also like, if you say,
it was good advice.
Don't wear this particular outfit because, and then you say,
you're bringing it on yourself.
And actually, why should you have to change what you wear? Why should you have to change your personality, etc., etc.? It is a sorry indictment.
It is, but just I have been thinking about BDO a lot recently. So we've got we've set up this sort of
this show is sponsored by BDO. No, it's not.
Northedge, can I say that absolutely a few more times? Or Contollo. No, I have been thinking about BDO because we've got 25% of our workforce in Contollo are female, which obviously is not enough. And I am worried about those women's career progression, because it's so hard to progress in professional services. And if you're female, you're talking before about how few women there are in corporate finance. And it's true of lots of professional services organisations. So, and I've been trying to think, what is it about BDO that gave me the opportunity to really thrive? And I think a lot of professional services, to be successful, you've got to win work to progress. And there's lots of people who can deliver, but there are far fewer who can deliver and sell. And so, but selling professional services is hardwired towards men. And that's understandable because the majority of clients are men. And that was true at BDO in corporate finance, and it's true now in consultancy to build environment. So if you want to create business development opportunity, those those events need to attract male clients to them, and because you want them to attend them, so you're inevitably going to do things that would exclude women, like golf and football and drinking and things. So the thing that BDO was good at was it put on a lot of gender agnostic events. So we'd have retail forums where we'd gather loads of interesting data, and the big retailers were interested in it and wanted to come, or we'd have dinners with great speakers and they'd want to come, or education events on topics that clients wanted. And that gave a level playing field to me as a woman with my male counterpart. Now, what you do after that, so you've been given the opportunity to meet these potential clients. How you take it forward is obviously up to you, regardless of what sex you are. But regardless of that, if someone's like passed you the ball, at least you've got a chance of getting it in the net, haven't you? So I've been thinking about what we could do at Contollo to create those same sort of environments for my female colleagues who are coming through the business.
I interviewed Nicola Merritt a few, probably last year, actually.
So she's absolutely in the thick of it, isn't she?
Absolutely, at Quartus. And she took part in a round table to coincide with International Women's Day. And she gave this story about a woman that they'd offered a job to. I think she was a partner. And then in between offering the job and starting the job, she found out she was pregnant. And she phoned up Nicola and she said, look, Nicola, I said, I'm going to have to withdraw from the job. And she said, why is that then? He said, because I've found out I'm pregnant. And Nicola said something on the lines of, that's great news that you're pregnant. The job will be ready for you when you're ready to come back to work, and we'll get a fantastic, energised member of staff, which is exactly what they got.
Absolutely.
Now, those sort of conversations are few and far between. Did you, and we're talking about BDO only in the sense that that's where you worked. Obviously, the corporate finance industry that you worked within was a lot wider than just that. So your experiences, are across the corporate finance world. Did you find, though, that you'd have to work harder than like an average male counterpart?
Yeah, of course. I think women absolutely have to shine compared. You've got to be well above average to compete with your average male.
You said earlier that you laugh very easily. I could give you some terrible news and I think you would laugh because it's your default. Your default reaction. Okay, so we're only going to talk about serious stuff now. Okay. Face comes across serious stuff. Okay, let's go back to Jonathan. No, let's go back to Contollo. Okay, so you set Contollo Group up. It's a name that you don't know what it means in terms of Contollo. If you don't, it's not like it says in a tin sort of thing. What does Contollo?
It means bring together.
Bring together.
In Latin.
In Latin. I wasn't very good at Latin at school, I'm afraid.
Neither was I, and I thought it was quite a smart thing to do. And then I went to this other round table, business leaders type forum, and literally 50% of the people there had some smart Latin name for their business that meant something deeply meaningful.
Yeah. So any to our listeners out there, my Latin teacher was called Peter Coleman, nicknamed Scraggy.
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 I can't imagine why.
Absolutely. No, this is serious. This is the new serious podcast.
Oh, right, okay. Yep.
Okay. Apologies. But I had 1 year of Latin, and I can honestly say I don't remember a single word of it. But I do remember the name of my teacher. So, okay, so you set Contollo Group up, which means bring together in Latin. What does it do?
So we're a consultancy to the built environment. So we've got 2 core disciplines in the business. One of them is cost and project management. So that's quantity surveyors. And the other is mechanical and electrical engineering.
And so then if I came to you with a problem, who would I be as a typical client of yours?
You might be a main contractor, or you might be a landowner or a developer or an end user client.
Yeah, it's interesting. Earlier you mentioned Jonathan Boyers, who's a personal friend, and he's just a really, really nice guy. I mean, it should be. You're married to him, but it's interesting that you spoke about the fact that you don't think you'd have achieved what you have achieved without his support, because obviously, he spent 35 years at KPMG. He is Mr. Corporate Finance. He won Dealmaker of the Year 4 times. Still thinks it should be more than that. But he would say the same about you. And yet, your success is on your merits as well. In terms of what he's brought to Contollo, and as a female founder, what is it?
Well, it's a few things really. So because he's a corporate financier and an extremely experienced one, and a lot of what I've been doing to raise the money and to negotiate with private equity, with the bank, with all our stakeholders is corporate finance. I've got some fantastic free advice on the side.
It would have cost you a fortune, wouldn't it?
It would have cost me a fortune. So that is fantastic. He's really, he gives good counsel and he gives advice. But he doesn't sulk if you don't take it, because obviously I'm a corporate financier as well, and it turns out that we're two at the opposite ends
you
of
sulk.
I'm a great sulker, but we're at the opposite ends of the spectrum. So I'm much more detail oriented, and he's much bigger picture. And so sometimes if I don't want to do the things that he suggested, and he's cool with that, which is healthy. I suppose the other thing is financially though. So, I'd in between Fishawack and Contollo's a period, it's nearly 2 years with no income, where Oliver Dennis and I were deciding what to do.
He's your fellow co-founder of Contollo
He's a fellow
Group.
co-founder, exactly. And so we were exploring all sorts of different things, trying to decide what to do next. We spent a year looking at all sorts of investments, thinking that we were going to create this amazing investment club. And we ended up with these two things, one of which is Contollo. So, but there was a lot of work that went into that with no income for a period. Now, I'd got some money from being paid out from Fishawack, and I'd got some equity in Fishawack, which got paid out. So I was covered from that perspective. But I don't think I'd have had the confidence not to to panic and get another job if Jonathan wasn't there, saying it's fine, I've got it all covered financially, and you take the time you need to sort it out. So there's a few different factors there which are important. There might be a lot more founders in the world if they weren't constrained by such ordinary things as paying the bills.
More female founders in the world if there were more Jonathans.
Exactly.
Okay, which in itself is not a great thing. But that's a valid point. I always think that in life is finite. So you have to do what you want to do. I listened to an interview once with, I think it was an astronaut. I think it was Chris Hadfield, and he was the guy who went into space and sang, "This is Major Tom from Ground Control," or whatnot. I don't want to get you talking about music because we'll be here all day, given your track record. But he was asked a question, what should I do for a job? And he said, when you go into a bookstore like a Waterstones, who also don't sponsor the Naked Founder podcast yet, what part of the bookshop do you go into? He said, because what interests you is where you'll go and read the books. And I thought about this, and I thought, actually, I go to the sports section, cricket, and I go to true crime. And my second choice of career was to be a detective, and I would love to have been a cricketer if I'd been good enough as well. So you found your calling in Contollo Group, but if the pressure had been on to pay your mortgage, you could have found yourself back in professional services.
Most definitely,
and not been happy.
Yeah. Well, I would have been happy.
Yeah.
It was I would have been happy, but this is.
Not as fulfilled. Not as
fulfilled, yes.
Okay. So one of the things you've done with Contollo is to try to create a business different from your experiences, I suppose, in the embodiment of you in the way you think businesses should be run. So one of the things you do is you meet every member of staff who joins a business.
I do.
That is a lot of coffee. I mean,
it's a big pot of coffee.
It's a big pot of coffee. Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you do that for?
I think, twofold really. I mean, it's always useful. I do find out what's going on in the business. But the reason I do it is because as a buy and build, the people in the business haven't chosen to join Contollo. They've chosen to join the company we acquired. So I need to sell to them what we're about and why we're doing it, and really why they should stay with us, because our business is only as good as the people in it. We haven't got any other assets. The people are our assets. So I'm very transparent. I want them to feel able to ask me anything, and they do ask me all sorts of things. So I do these new starter workshops every quarter now. So I meet everyone who joins the business within 3 months of them starting, and we spend half a day together, and I tell them loads of stuff about Contollo and our values and our culture. And then I ask them loads of stuff about the place where they used to work. So what did they like about it? What didn't they like about it? Why did they join us? Which is really interesting, really useful information. And I think it's really important.
I know a lot of businesses and a lot of entrepreneurs, and they get to a certain scale and they stop learning the names of the people who work for them. So they'll pass people on the staircase and they'll just nod without knowing their name. And I think to myself, actually, that's just that relationship would be 10% stronger if you knew their name and you knew a little bit about their backstory. Now, you might argue you're too busy to know all that as well. Just out of interest, if you're having all these coffees with all these new members of staff, have you got an icebreaker at the start? I mean, just imagine, let's play role play here, Ruth. I'm a new member of staff. I've just joined Contollo. And for the right fee, I could make that happen. Okay, no, I couldn't. I
do have an icebreaker. So the icebreaker is...
You've not said hello yet.
So you introduce yourself. Hello.
Okay. Hello.
You say, I'm Ruth Percival.
Okay.
You would
Full
say
name.
your full name.
Okay, Chris Maguire.
Your job title.
Yeah, I'm head of sales now.
And which office you come from.
Let's say Bath.
And then I want you to think about... To complete this sentence. So if you want to get me chatting, ask me about...
Glastonbury.
Right. So we do that. We go around the table and then I divide everybody up into pairs and then they can ask each other about that thing. And then everybody gets chatting with each other. And that's how we break the ice.
That's really fascinating. So I used to run a business networking group and we had like 10 people around the table. And I said to each of them, I said, before the event, tell me one thing about you that would surprise the rest of the room. And they tell all sorts of stories. And there's a guy who I won't name, who's a lovely guy, great sense of humour. And he had to escape 3 fires, 2 of which he was completely naked. Now, these were serious fires, Ruth. You know.
Sorry, I'm laughing inappropriately again. Was he burnt?
Nobody was hurt. He wasn't burnt.
Good,
He wasn't burnt. But he tells a story, and he tells it with a smile on his face. It's an icebreaker, you know. And what I did is I said, right, these are the 10 things about everybody in the room that would surprise you. Can you guess which one was which? And it was just a really, really, really nice way. And the great thing was that after a year of running this networking group, you could still remember that unusual fact.
Yeah. And
I think what it goes to show is if you've got an interesting people like you have, that thing, tell me something about yourself that will get you chatting, then that just shows that you're interested in them. And I think that makes you a better leader. And it's just the marginal gains.
It's back to the point about you saying about memory. So my memory's awful, and being menopausal, it's becoming a lot more awful at the moment. But I do remember stuff like that. I'll remember that somebody's interested in cricket or Glastonbury, or they've got a dog to call Colin, but I might not remember their name. So it is helpful to me to know those things. I have got
that same challenge. It's nothing to do with the menopause, at least I don't think it is. But it's interesting you talk about the menopause because a lot of female founders, I mean, and thankfully I think it's changing. I think women are being much more open about it and talking about brain fog and stuff like that. And the only way, you've got 2 daughters, you'd want them to know about this.
I would, because I didn't. No. My mother never talked about it. So I do talk to my daughter. You can't go on about it all the time, or make it an excuse for every bad behaviour. But
maybe 5 times a day. Maybe.
Well, I think 10's reasonable.
10 times reasonable. You spoke earlier about Northedge and said they were the perfect investor for you as well. How important is it to find the right investment partner?
It's everything. It's the difference between enjoying yourself as a leader of the business and having an utterly miserable time. And I'm fortunate in that I am enjoying this role, and I've got an investor that I trust and I like. There's lots of reasons for that. They are really straight with me, but I am really straight with them. So you've got to give them the bad news straight away. They don't want it. They don't want surprises. In the investor, you want to know the investment committee. You want to know who's going to be making decisions about your business. You want to be able to meet that individual before you decide to take that investment. Don't just be thinking about the person that you're engaged with through a sale process.
But it gets back to what we've said throughout this entire episode, which is people understanding each other. And, you know, to be told the computer says, no, you can't do that investment without knowing why, all it does is create a barrier between you and them moving forward.
Yeah.
You've made 5 acquisitions so far. Like I said at the start, you've got 160 potential acquisitions lined up, which is probably a week's work for Jonathan Boyer. How do you find the companies to buy?
Through through a lot of trial and error, to be honest. So we do some desktop research. So Alvarez and Marcel are doing the work for me at the moment. They've got some Swish AI tool that they've been using, which has been fantastic, actually. So that looks at company's house data, websites, looks at people, ages of directors, sectors, all that kind of stuff. And that churns out a list, which actually is, so far in my career, that's the best list I've seen with the least amount of effort. Thinking about how we used to do it 20 years ago with fame reports and things like that. So you start with that, then you've got to plough your way through it. I share it with my business leadership team. So there's about 15 people who go through it, who know other people in the industry, and they'll write comments on it. Yes, no, fantastic idea. No, what you think you've got the wrong information or what have you. I'll use them to make the introductions where I can. So if somebody knows somebody, that's a far better introduction than me cold calling them. But at the end of the day, the majority of it is me writing emails to people who I don't know, saying, here I am, this is what we're doing, would you be interested in a conversation? And that means a lot. So far this month in May, I've met 12 new businesses this month. I know we're at the end of the month, but that's quite a lot of effort that goes into doing that. Yeah,
it is. And I mean, you talk about deal origination and that software that identifies it. It's the same for the algorithms they use to target you for advertising on Facebook. You know, they look at your age demographic and they think to themselves, right, okay, he or she is 65, going to be thinking about retirement. Okay, more likely to be thinking about an exit as well. That's fascinating. What you will find though, Ruth, is when you start to contact people now, you'll say, "Hi, it's Ruth Percival here," and they'll say, "Hi, I listened to your episode on the Naked Founder podcast.
Well,
the best podcast I've ever heard."
So I had a meeting with somebody last Friday, and they had listened to the last podcast. So he said, "Oh, I know you don't like dickheads."
Right. Okay. Now listen.
Which was an icebreaker for the beginning of the meeting.
Listen. There's So I co-host another podcast with the aforementioned Jonathan Boyers called The Dealmaker Uncut as well. And the thing about podcasts, it's like a YouTube channel. It's just a different platform to consume your news. And you think to yourself that no one's listening to it in the same way that you think when you write a story, no one's reading it. But they do, providing the content's really interesting. So what does the future look like for Contollo Group? And what does it look like for Ruth Percival as in the third person?
So we're incredibly ambitious for the business. So you've said we're 230 people today, and I'd like to double that this year. So I'd like to get us to nearly 500 by the end of this year, which is why I'm going hell for leather with the acquisition, reaching out and trying and meeting as many businesses as possible. We want to round out in sectors. So I'm thinking all the time about business resilience, and I think resilience comes through having that nice balance of sectors in the business. So I want to get into some more public sector work. We're quite dominant in private sector work at the moment. And then following the end of this year, I think we'll look to reach out into some different disciplines. At the moment, I mentioned we're in cost and project management, mechanical, electrical engineering. Very much like to move into civil and structural engineering as well, and maybe even go overseas. I'm very interested in the Middle East actually as a place to do some business. Or that might sound counterintuitive at the moment.
No. But do you ever regret not having started your own business earlier?
I think about this a lot. The answer is no, because I'm not a person who has regrets. I think as people, you're either in the past, the present, or the future, aren't you? And I don't linger in the past. So I've got one foot in the present and one foot in the future. So I don't think that. And I do think that the circuitous zigzag path of my career is perfectly conditioned me to do this role.
Yeah, and you can't change the past.
No.
You can only write the next chapter. Final question of the Naked Founder podcast is, if you could write a letter to yourself, or your younger self, or another founder, what would you say?
I'd say be more confident and be more bold.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been really nice to speak to you, Ruth Percival. In next week's episode, we'll be speaking to Professor Grindale. on the student who wrecked his
Electron microscope.
Wrecked that. And
I dropped a lot of glassware as well.
Absolutely. So Professor Grindale, looking forward to that one. No, on a serious note, really nice to hear your story, Ruth. That's the end of this episode of the Naked Founder podcast. As always, we're sponsored by Financial. Thank you very much to them, and our producer Dan Brown as well. As always, my name has been Chris Maguire.